Hi everyone, Kelly here, and today I wanted to talk to you about my most recent reads. And I have quite a few because I've just been busy filming other things that hopefully I can get through these quickly. Just so you know, in case you've noticed in the last few ones, I've started putting my currently reading pile right behind me. So if you're ever curious of what I'm currently reading in mostly physical form, since I can't put my audiobooks and ebooks up there, that's why they keep changing. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. And so we're gonna go through these and the ones I like the least to the ones I like the best. And the first one, the one that I liked the least this last couple weeks, was The Likeness by Tana. And this is the second book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. The first one is called In the Woods, I believe. And In the Woods, I gave 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I liked kind of the concept of it, and I thought the characters were really interesting. So I was like interested to keep going. And the thing with Tana is these are murder mysteries, but they're not written like your average thriller or murder mystery. They're very much written, like, I don't know how to describe it, just kind of more literary. Like, they are very character focused. The mystery is definitely on the back burner. We spend a lot of time just analyzing all of the people and their motives and their day-to-day lives in these books. And I just found it really boring. It just wasn't my type of murder mystery. I think that some people, who might think that murder mysteries don't have enough literary merit might enjoy her books more because they are, I don't know, like better written or something like that. But I just don't find them interesting. And the concept of this, because it won't spoil the first one at all, the concept of this one is that we're following detective case. Is it Cassie or Casey? I think I'm gonna call her Cassie. I don't know if that's right. But anyways, we're following Cassie, and she gets called in by somebody on the Dublin Murder Squad saying, you have to see this murder. And she's like, why am I is this not her case? Why am I getting called into it? And when she gets called in and looks at the victim, it turns out the victim is like identical to her. And so the other detectives actually thought it was her at first, and then realized when they called her that she was safe, and this is a look-alike, so that's why it's called The Likeness. And so this is about her trying to find out about this other woman that looks just like her, and the woman has taken the name of when she was undercover as a cop, like years before. She had an undercover identity, and this woman who is dead is going by that undercover identity. So it definitely is still related to Cassie and her life. So like they're trying to find out who killed this woman. What is Alexandra is the ID, oldest car. So they're trying to find out who killed Alex, and who she was in real life, since she obviously, that was a fake identity and all that stuff, since Cassie had made that up for her undercover. And so I was really interested. It sounded great, like, finding out who stole your fake identity, getting involved with all the people that were in her life and all that stuff seemed interesting. No, it very much turned into this kind of like pretentious book, because like she's kind of getting to know these friends. That there was a group of friends that Alex was like involved with, and they think maybe one of them might have committed the murder, or somebody that they would know. And so they're trying to like infiltrate this group and like find out their personalities. And so we're getting really big character studies of all these people, and it just felt very pretentious, because all of these guys, they are like, they're scholars, and not there's anything wrong with scholars, but the way that they act, it was just weird. It kind of felt like we took If We Were Villains and like stuffed it into like a normal murder mystery, and it worked for If We Were Villains because they were like in a pretentious school, like in a Shakespeare Academy type thing. But this, it just felt like weird that this detective is just thrown into this academic setting. I didn't find it interesting. People love this book. If you look at the reviews, it gets rave reviews. So maybe people really like that style. It's very slow. I felt like the murder mystery aspect was pretty predictable and not really that interesting when it came to play. I don't know. I'm not going to continue the series. I'm getting rid of this one. I have the 4th book in the series. I'm getting rid of that one as well. I gave this 2 stars. And now I have several 3-star reads. First is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste. And this is about a family who we know from the very beginning that their oldest daughter shows up dead, and it's kind of like it goes back and forth between present time when we are dealing with her her death and like trying to figure out, was it murder? Was it suicide? Was it an accident? Like what happened that she ended up dead? And then like going back years before to the beginning of the parents' marriage, how they got together and met each other, and then also like when they started having kids and like kind of the kids growing up. So it's just about this whole family. It's more of a family drama than like necessarily a murder mystery. So I think you wouldn't count this as a thriller. You would just, this is more like a family drama that just happens to involve a death. And I know a lot of people really love this, but I just didn't find it very compelling for me. It was 3 stars. I think it's well written. I could tell her writing style is really good, and I'm interested to read Little Fires Everywhere by her. I just didn't necessarily love this book. And part of it was there's some plot lines in this that are ones I just really hate, and I don't necessarily want to say them because that might constitute as spoilers, but it involves like family stuff and marriage things that I just don't like to see in books. And it's part of the reason why I read a lot of YA in middle grade, is because it seems like whenever I read adult books, these same themes pop up in books, and I'm like, I really hate that. I really hate this view of marriage that seems to come up anytime you read adult books. I think to be interested, you need to be sucked into this family's lives, and I just wasn't. I didn't really care about their lives because of these certain plot elements. So if you want to ask me about them, if there's stuff that you like to avoid that involves marriage and family and kids, go ahead and message, like, you know, send me a comment and I will put a spoiler tag on it and tell you. But yeah, I just didn't really enjoy it that much. 3 stars because it is well written, but just wasn't for me. And then I also listened to a book called Paper Hearts by Ali Novak. And this is just like a cutesy young adult contemporary. It's very much just a romance. Like that's the main plot line. We're following a girl named Felicity who meets this boy at a masquerade ball, and they kind of flirt and like each other. And then it turns out he is a member of a famous boy band, and they kind of end up going on this road trip together with her friends and get to know each other, develop a relationship, blah, blah, blah. Like nothing new or groundbreaking, but just a cute, I don't remember what I had read this after, but I read it after something serious and I just wanted something fast and cutesy. So I listened to it in one day, gave it 3 stars. It was fine. Nothing like exciting or different about it, but if you just need a palate cleanser, which is what I used it for, that's why I picked it. I didn't give it any higher than a 3 because it deals very heavily in miscommunication trope, which I hate. And in this one, it really was like a matter of like, if you just had one conversation or like got over yourself, like just a little bit, none of the conflict would have happened. So that was why it was 3 stars, but it was cute. It was fine. And then next for 3 stars, I had Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi. And I know this is a really beloved middle grade fantasy, and I was really hoping to love this, but it was just all right for me. Like, I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's whimsical and cute, but I just never really got into the world. So this is all about a girl named Alice. This very much felt like almost like an Alice in Wonderland retelling, or like inspired by Alice in Wonderland, but just didn't have I didn't feel pulled in by this Alice like I felt pulled in Alice in Wonderland. So Alice, her father had gone missing years before, and this boy who she has hated when she was younger shows up and says, I know where your father is. If you help me, I will help you find him. And they go to Furthermore, which is another like world, parallel kind of universe type thing. I don't know how that works in this fantasy world. It's a different place than where they live. And they go to Furthermore, and things are just crazy in Furthermore. And I think that's why it kind of feels like a Wonderland retelling, because it's very nonsensical, like Wonderland is. But I think the difference is in Furthermore, I couldn't even figure out anything. Like her writing is very lyrical, and so like there'd be all these descriptions, but they meant nothing. It was like gobbledygook in my head. Like she's saying all these things, and I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to say. And so I can't picture it. And so even though I think a lot of people find this really whimsical and fun, I just couldn't get sucked into the world because I couldn't picture it in my mind. And I think this relies so heavily on imagery and colors that if you can't picture it, that something is lacking. And that was my problem. I will continue with the series because I The second one is, they're not necessarily connected completely, like it's not a direct sequel from what I know, because it follows a different protagonist in that one. And that one seems really interesting, and so I want to give it a try. I want to try this world again. But this one, I just couldn't feel connected at all. And I'm sad about that, because it seems like it would be a great world. But I mean, I've already like forgotten almost everything that happened because I didn't have a vivid image of it, and I just finished this like a week ago. All right, and now moving on to my 4 stars. And I ended up reading a lot of middle grade books this month, because if you didn't know, my Keep Read Unhaul video that I did for January, I had bought a bunch of like children's fiction in middle grade, and so I kind of had to read a bunch of it, and some I liked more than others. So furthermore, didn't really work for me. But then I read Heidi, and I really enjoyed this. And I gave this one 4 stars. And the thing is, I felt a little bad for Heidi, because I read this after I read Anne of Green Gables, which I'll talk about later. And they're very similar. I mean, they both start out with these girls who are orphans that are just, you know, dropped at an older person's house, basically. And they are charming little girls and kind of have to charm the older person who never thought they were going to have kids into loving them. And then they're kind of like adventures. And so they're very similar books, but I read Heidi after Anne of Green Gables, so I just didn't love Heidi as much. And I don't know if I had read this book first, or if I had read them like many months apart, if this would have gotten 5 stars. I don't know. It's just a consequence of reading them so close together. But I did enjoy Heidi. It's a precious story. Like I said, it's about a girl who's been orphaned and is dropped off at her grandfather's house, and he just really was not expecting to suddenly have a child living with him. He kind of lives on a mountain by himself, you know, taking care of his goats, not really interacting with the town at all. And Heidi kind of just charms her way into his life and into like the community's lives. And it was a sweet book. I loved Heidi. I liked a lot of the different characters, like the grandfather, and there's a woman at the bottom of the hill that she calls grandmother. She's not related to her. It's just a woman of the village, and she calls her the grandmother. And I loved their interactions. So it is a really sweet book. There is a lot of religious stuff in this, so if you're not somebody that wants that in your books, it is definitely a heavy theme. I didn't necessarily mind that part, but it was a little heavy-handed, and I've heard some people like in their reviews not really enjoy it because it definitely kind of takes over the storyline about halfway through. But it is still a sweet story for children, and I enjoyed it. And then going in a complete different direction, I read an adult thriller called The Other People by C.J. Tudor. I was given this as an e-arc from NetGalley and the publisher, so thank you to them for letting me read this ahead of time. I did read this before it came out on January 28th, but I didn't get to review it in time. I will be doing a dedicated review on this one coming soon, probably up in the next week, because I gave you guys the option to vote on what I would do a full review on in February, and you voted for this book. So right now I'm going to do a very quick little summary in case you don't want to read or watch the entire review. So I given this 4 stars, really enjoyed it, thought it was a really fast-paced thriller. It's told in several different perspectives. We're hearing from a father who swears he saw his child on the highway in somebody else's car, so he spends all of his time driving up and down the highway looking for that car again and for his missing daughter. And then we follow a waitress who works at one of the rest stops along the highway, so she sees this man often and they interact just like a normal waitress to customer interaction. And then we follow another woman who has a young child with her who is also on this highway driving around because she's on the run from something that we don't know about. And just the way these storylines all connect, a lot of mysterious things are happening, a lot of confusing stuff is going on. For a long time, I had no idea what was going on in this book, but I was enjoying it and I was like sucked in, and probably could have sat and read it in one sitting, but I just didn't have the time for that. But it was just like so compelling and fast-paced and quick. So if you're just looking for something with a lot of surprises and fun things, and you're like, I don't care that I don't have any idea what's going on, I'm just having a good time, that was this book. And then next I want to talk about The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand. I did do a full spoiler-free review for this, so I'll link that up above and down below. And so that if you want my in-depth review and thoughts, you can look at that. So I'm just gonna be really quick in this one, and I'll just say this is a young adult contemporary about a girl who just turned 18, and we're hearing from her perspective as since she just turned 18, she's figuring out what she's gonna do with her life, where she's going to go to college, what she wants to study, and also kind of thinking of her birth family because she was adopted when she was a baby, and like she doesn't know her birth family at all, doesn't know anything about them, and she's kind of just decided she wants to kind of figure out some of that, to kind of learn more about her identity, she feels. And then we also are hearing from her birth mother while she was still pregnant. So this is like, 18 years in the past. And that is all through letter writing, where the birth mom is writing a letter to her unborn child that she's not supposed to read until she's 18. And so that's how the two timelines connect. And I thought this was really good. I gave it 4 stars because I didn't think it was perfect. There was some like writing stuff I didn't love, but some of that stuff wouldn't bother other people. It had to do with like a very unnecessary romantic subplot that I think could have just been completely taken out. There was enough other stuff happening with the adoption and family issues and friendship. I didn't think it needed a romantic subplot. But other than that, for the most part, I love the representation of adoption. For those of you that don't know, my kids were adopted, so I really think it's important that young people get to read adoption in stories. I loved the relationship that we heard about her and her parents, and there were some parts that were a lot different than mine, because like we are very open with our kids about their adoption, and we'll tell them basically anything about their birth parents that we know. And it wasn't that way with her family, but I think that it's still true to how some adoptive families are, because this was a closed adoption, and so they never really thought that they would have to talk about the birth family. And so all adoptions are different, so I liked how the representation showed that like families are different. Like no matter what, every family is different, and the situations are going to be different for everybody. So I thought it was really great to see a young adult book where adoption is on the forefront. So I would highly recommend this book. And then next I want to talk about my 2 5-star reads from the last couple weeks, and I loved both of these. It's kind of hard to pick one over the other, and they're actually both middle grade, because like I said, I read a lot of middle grade this month. And first is Anna of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I am doing the Analog 2020, where we're reading all of the books in the Anne series, one a month, and I will link that down below if you want to check it out and join, because we're reading Anne of Avonlea right now. And I just love this book. I had never read it as a kid, or at least I don't remember ever reading it. I mean, I know I saw parts of the miniseries, but I don't, like, other than just what's in popular culture about Anne, I never really read the whole story. And I just adored this. I love Anne's character. Like, she is so sweet. Like, she, had a hard life. Like, her parents died young, and she was moved around from, like, family to family until she ended up with Marilla and Matthew. And that's who she ends up with at the beginning of this story at Green Gables. And even though she's had that tough life and kind of been shoved around and not really given an education or anything, she's so spunky and smart and funny. And she just like really makes everyone fall in love with her. And that's what I loved. Same way with Heidi. I love how this little girl could like take these cranky adults that don't really socialize and pull them into her orbit and like love them and make them love her. And I just love their relationship. I loved Matthew. He's just kind of the quiet, shy, older man who just adored Anne. And then there's there's just all the characters in this are so precious. I can't go on and on because I could talk about this forever, but I loved it. 5 stars. It'll be definitely one that I'll share with my kids as they get older. And I'm very excited to continue on with the series. I'm actually already like halfway through Anne of Avonlea, so I have continued onto it and love it. And then last, I want to talk about Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. This is the first book in the Immortals Quartet. This is the series that takes place after the Song of Linus, like the Alana series. And I finished all the Alana books last year, so I want to read all of these this year. And I adored this book. I thought I really enjoyed the Alana books. Like you've heard me talk about them probably, and I gave the majority of them 5 stars, either 4 or 5 stars, and really loved them. And I loved Alana as a character, but there were definitely some flaws in that series in the way she paced them, because it covered many years of Alana's life. I think she started off at like 10 and then ended up like around 18 or something like that, and it would skip time periods quite frequently, and so there was pacing problems. This book was perfectly paced. I loved the main character. I just loved everything about it. So this is definitely a 5 stars, and I probably love this one more than all of the Alana books. And I was really surprised by that. I don't know if it's just because her writing improved as she went on, or if there was just something about this book that I just loved. But this is about a girl named Dane who's, I don't remember how old she was. She's young. She's like probably around 12 maybe. I'm not for sure. And she has the ability to kind of like connect with animals, like talk to them kind of thing, like feel what they're feeling and what they're trying to communicate. And she gets picked up by this woman who is taking a herd of horses from or ponies from one area of the country to the other, and so she is hired to come along and help take care of the ponies, and she can do quite a lot of finding out what they need and all that stuff, and has just special connection with them. And along the way she meets a bunch of characters from the other series, so you definitely want to read them in order, because we encounter a lot of the people from the Alana quartet, and just so many adventures and things happening. I just felt like this was a really tight story, like fast-paced. There wasn't a lot of dull moments. It didn't skip from one place to another so quickly. There was really good transitions. I loved the characters, the return of old characters, but then also the introduction of new characters. Like there's a wizard guy. I'm sorry, I'm not good at like fantasy, but there's like a mentor type character who I think is kind of like a wizard character, and he is really interesting in the way she meets him and all that. And I just fell in love with like this whole story, and I'm very excited to be continuing this series. So if that sounds interesting to you, a girl who talks to animals and connects with them, and that story, get through the Song of Linus series so you can read this one. I mean, that one was a really good series, but I am really enjoying this one so far. So that's why it's like my top of the last couple weeks. So that's it. Those are all the books that I have finished in the last few weeks. I would love to hear from you if you want to talk about any of these down below. Thanks. Bye.